Well, what is up, all of you Ugnots and Jawas out there, and welcome back to another episode of Mando Talk. I am your host, as always, Caleb Keller, and I am so excited this week to bring you another Bad Batch spoiler discussion, and let's address the rancor in the room, if you will. If you are watching on YouTube, you will quickly notice that I am completely by myself this week on our episode, but that is a-okay. Here's why I'm by myself. Zach Horvath and his family have officially welcomed in their new addition to the family. So if you are on YouTube, go ahead and in the comments say congrats, Zach. I know I'm continuing to send my love, support, prayers his way. So those of you that are our listeners, please do that as well. I'm sure that he would greatly appreciate that. So that is why I'm completely alone this week. We're going to have a bunch of fun regardless, though. I'm going to share all of my thoughts when it comes to the Bad Batch episode 12. And you know what? You let me know what you think of all of these spoiler things that I talk about. So again, if you did not know, this is a spoiler discussion of episode 12, the Bad Batch, titled Rescue on Ryloth. So before we get there, a couple of plugs. Number one, Thursday night, our live stream is coming back this coming Thursday, the 22nd of July at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. We got a bunch of topics to hit because we took last week off. We got the Mandalorian's Emmy nominations, our thoughts on the Disney Gallery Season 2 finale special coming next month, and we got some new Kenobi details. A potential young Leia and potentially an Inquisitor role has been revealed. So I'm super excited to talk about that stuff, and joining me is going to be none other than Rebel Scum Texan, and I cannot wait to have that conversation with him regarding those news pieces and maybe some more. You know, we still got a couple of days between now and that Thursday live stream, so we might have some other news pieces to talk about. But if you are on YouTube and if you want to check out that live stream, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are on the road to 100 subscribers by the start of the Book of Boba Fett. I think that is a challenging goal, but I think we can get there. So please help us out in achieving that goal. We would greatly appreciate it. And then my final plug for us this week is Discord. Later in this episode, I'm actually going to read some thoughts, theories, opinions on episode 12 of The Bad Batch that were sent in to us on Discord. So if you want to continue to have your voice heard on our podcast, join our Discord. The link is in the bio, and you'll have a ton of fun. We'll have a ton of fun, and we'll get to read your thoughts on the podcast episode. I cannot wait to continue to do that. So join that Discord if you have not done so already. So with those plugs in, let's go ahead and get to the Bad Batch episode 12 spoiler discussion. We always start the episodes out with reading our Bad Batch Twitter poll. So let me pull up this poll for you to see if you are watching on YouTube, but I will read those results. I will share those results for all of you listening as well. So obviously, Twitter at Mando Talk. Follow us there if you have not done so already. But here is our poll. Episode 12 poll. Star Wars and the Bad Batch fans. What are your overall impressions of Bad Batch Episode 12, Rescue on Ryloth? As always, we have these four categories. We got not for me, it's okay, good but not great, and of course, top tier. So 5% of our total votes so far have been for not for me, 0% for it's okay, 30% for good but not great, and 65% of our YouTube or Twitter or whoever podcast listeners, those of you over there on Twitter, voted for top tier. I think that's a pretty big number, and I think that is right where I land, honestly, this week. I think top tier is right down my alley because I'm continuing to, I guess last week was good but not great for me because of Hera and Chopper, but this week really expanded upon it. So for me, that landed right at top tier. Now, obviously, Zach is not here with me to share his thoughts on the episode. However, he did watch the episode and he sent me his thoughts. So I wanted to read those thoughts for you to see as well. And he'll continue to do this as he's taking that baby leave, as they are getting used to the new norm in his family. He'll continue to send me his overall thoughts. So you'll continue to hear from Zach. But here are his thoughts on episode 12. This week's episode is much better than last week's. I was on the edge of my seat for most of the episode, and I love the dynamic of the Bad Batch with Hera. I land in the good but not great, but it was almost tipping into top tier. This was a much needed episode, and with that ending, I actually can't wait to see what happens next. I am so happy and thrilled that that's how Zach is feeling about this Bad Batch episode. Typically for Zach, it takes a lot to get him in that top tier category, so I'm very thrilled, very happy with him getting that good but not great vibes from the Bad Batch this week. And let us know where you land. We always love to hear your thoughts, so jump down in the YouTube comments if you're watching on YouTube, hop over to Discord if you are listening on our podcast platform to tell us where you landed in those categories. If you want to expand upon, you just click in your vote selection. We would love to hear those thoughts. So we got our general thoughts out of the way. You've heard from Zach, even though he's not here. You've heard from me. I thought it was top tier because they expanded upon Hera and Chopper, and I'm going to dive deeper into that here in a second. So you know what? Let's just do it. Let's dive into the Bad Batch spoiler discussion. And typically what we do here is we go like linearly throughout the plot, but actually this week, since it's just me, I figured it'd be easier if I just took it kind of like a character by character or groups of character standpoint. Like we just break down each and every single one of those. So the first character that I wanted to break down regarding this week's episode of The Bad Batch is none other than Admiral Rampart. Now, Admiral Rampart continues to make Imperial moves, and I'm really starting to, even though he's evil, I'm starting to enjoy the character of Admiral Rampart. So, first thing that stood out for me with Admiral Rampart, he frames the attempt on Senator Ta's life on the Syndulla followers. That was really interesting to me. I did not see that coming, but it makes sense. Second thing, he tells the Twi'lek citizens that Senator Ta is healing. Now, this is a question for you, those of you out there listening. Is he really healing, or is this just a cover-up? Because in last week's episode, it pretty much looked like Senator Ta got, if you're following what I'm saying. You know, he looked like he got sniped by Crosshair. Doesn't really look like there would be any recovering from that, but you know what? You let me know. Is Senator Ta really healing, or is this just a cover, and is this just, again, further evidence of Rampart, you know, being an Imperial officer, an Imperial admiral? He's playing that role perfectly. And then the next thing that stood out for me with Admiral Rampart, he isn't afraid to put Crosshair in his place when instructing him to stick to the current mission of getting Hera and the Syndulla followers, which I think eventually he looks back on that and maybe notices that wasn't a good decision, because at the very end of this episode, he does in fact green light Crosshair to go after the Bad Batch, which I think is going to set up some pretty interesting things in this show, and I'm very, very, very excited to see what will happen with that. So those were my thoughts on Admiral Rampart. He really stood out to me this week, honestly. Last week, you know, we got a little bit more of him being an Imperial, if you will, his character starting to show, and this week, you know, they even dive deeper into it, and they're starting to legitimize, at least in my eyes, how, I guess, intimidating Rampart could be if I was living in the Star Wars galaxy. So the next character that I want to talk about in this week's episode for our spoiler discussion really stood out to me as well, and that is Captain Hauser. Now, Captain Hauser potentially introduces a very interesting plot point in the Bad Batch, and I'm just going to go through his character arc, his development throughout this episode linearly, and I'm going to share my thoughts on Captain Hauser throughout this path. So the first thing, he is visually struggling with Rampart's decision to hunt down Hera and frame the Syndullas. First of all, when I look at Captain Hauser, first of all, he is a great-looking clone. If there was a GQ magazine of clones, I think Hauser would probably be number one on that list as far as, you know, top 10 best-looking clones. But anyway, that was completely random. I apologize on that, but I was looking at that picture that you're seeing there on YouTube, and that just stands out to me. But next thing, yeah, he's really struggling with Rampart's decisions, and it's very interesting to see that he is starting to maybe question the orders, which I'll talk a little bit more about here in a second. So, what Hauser ends up doing is that he aids the Bad Batch and the Syndullas in escaping and convinces other clones to lay down their weapons and defy the Imperial Order. So, this leads me to this very important question. What does this mean regarding the effectiveness of the inhibitor chips at this point? Do you think they are wearing off, or do you think that maybe some of the clones just have an ability to ignore those inhibitor chips? I am currently just thinking that they are wearing off. I would love to hear your thoughts on that, though, because if you think back a couple of episodes ago, when Wrecker just clicks and his inhibitor chip, just clicks on all of a sudden, he just immediately, even though the Bad Batch in that moment didn't necessarily defy any Imperial order, but he immediately attacked them because they did not execute Order 66. At least that's how I'm remembering it currently. So that really makes me question how long these inhibitor chips are actually going to work. If Hauser himself is already struggling with following order, and he also convinced other clones to do the same thing, maybe those clones as well have the ability to ignore the inhibitor chips. But again, I'm thinking this is evidence to indicate that the inhibitor chips are just wearing off. What say you, though? You let me know if I'm completely off base. Please tell me why. Explain to me what you're thinking regarding this. But Captain Hauser specifically really stood out to me this week. Number one, because of his looks. I already alluded to that. Best looking clone out there, probably. And also because of the potential plot details, direction that this could lead to. Now, the next character that we're going to break down from this episode of The Bad Batch is, in fact, one of my faves, probably my favorite Bad Batch member is Crosshair. And man, does he continue to display his hatred for Clone Force 99. So, again, I'm going to approach this linearly. I'm just going to hit everything that Crosshair went through in this episode. Number one, a probe droid reports a sighting of the Bad Batch on Ryloth. And this is what motivates Crosshair to drop the mission of finding Hera and focus solely on the Bad Batch. Now, this request is denied by Rampart, and Crosshair is actually supposed to go to the Imperial facility where they're making the dumonium, I think that's how you say that, where they're making that material. He's supposed to go there to aid in that attack, but he senses, or he's able to predict, that the Bad Batch, or at least part of the Bad Batch, is at the capital. And this is where, we continue to get these really cool Crosshair moments, and I really loved to see it. So he's able to predict the next moves that are made by the Bad Batch as he waits for their exit from the capital. Now, as he's sitting there waiting, he was going to be able to just murk the Bad Batch as they came out, but Captain Hauser, again, defies those orders, and he instructs the Bad Batch to go the other way, which this leads to the arrest of Captain Hauser and the other clones that laid down their weapons. So, Crosshair, again, as the Bad Batch is flying away, is highly, highly, highly motivated to go after that crew. Now, is this going to be the main focus of the show to finish off the season? The fact that Crosshair then at the end of this episode went to Rampart, requested to go after Clone Force 99. Rampart greenlit that mission, and for me personally, I really, really, really hope that that's the route that we are going with Crosshair. This right here, Crosshair, the duels that we've had, the standoffs that we've had, this is what has made the Bad Batch very enjoyable for me. Yes, we've got Omega's character development. We've got all of these other characters coming in. We've got Hera, Chopper, Cad Bane, Fennec Shand, all of these great connections, but Crosshair and his standoffs with the Bad Batch and his internal struggle that I think we're going to get later in this season is really what makes this show special to me, and I hope that they continue to play off of that as we get to the end of this season. But you let me know, do you think this is going to be the main focus of the show to finish off the season? You let me know in the comments or on Discord. Now, the next characters that we are going to focus on from this Bad Batch episode is, in fact, the Bad Batch themselves. So, the Bad Batch themselves this week, their heavy involvement is what made this episode way more enjoyable for me, as well as the expansion on Hera and Chopper. But obviously, since this show is called The Bad Batch, getting The Bad Batch some more is what made this episode top tier for me. Now, here's what happens with The Bad Batch. We get Hera sending a transmission to Omega asking for aid in breaking out her family from prison. We alluded to this last week in our episode where we thought that this is how the Bad Batch was going to get incorporated. We thought Hera was going to send a warning signal or a please come help me kind of signal, and in fact that's exactly what she did. She reaches out, she tries to contact Omega, and that contact ends up going through, and Omega has to convince the Bad Batch crew to go back to Ryloth. And she's successful in convincing them to go back. But then when we get there, Omega and Hera both have to convince the Bad Batch to get involved after spotting Crosshair and that Imperial probe droid that spotted them. So I thought that this moment was strong character development for Omega. We see that she is someone very much so like Ahsoka and other characters that come to my mind, regarding, just wanting to do the right thing, even though maybe it's not the most convenient thing to do in that moment. But doing the right thing overall is what drives Omega, and I thought that was extremely important, extremely valuable to see this week. So that was probably the biggest character development moment of this Bad Batch episode. Now, let's talk about how cool Hunter is, just real quick. I know that's something that Zach always loves talking about. Hunter sensing that probe droid behind them and just flipping and then stabbing it and destroying it was great. That was super cool to see. His sensing abilities were full on display, and I loved that moment. Now, in order to get the mission going, because Omega and Hera still have to convince the Bad Batch to actually go and save the Syndulla family and their followers, the pitch is to attack the Dumonium refinery while another group sneaks inside the capital prison. And after they make that pitch to them, the Bad Batch crew is like, okay, that actually sounds legit, so let's follow it through. So here's the mission that went down. I'll share what happened in the episode. If you're listening to this, you've probably already seen it, but that's A-okay. I'll just share what went down, and I'll share my thoughts on it as I go through this mission aspect. So Chopper is caught as he is attempting to turn the cannons offline at the refinery. We got some cool Chopper moments there. It gave me some heavy Rebel vibes. I really loved seeing Chopper's involvement in the mission this week. Omega and Hera commandeer an Imperial shuttle and take down the cannons at the refinery. So we see our first initial moments of Hera actually being a pilot as a young Twi'lek, and I thought that was great to see, and I really, really, really enjoyed that moment. Let's see what's next. Hunter and Echo make their way into the capital and break the Syndulla crew out. So this is something that I've kind of touched on before in the Bad Batch show so far. This mission gets done pretty quick as far as the Bad Batch able to break out someone that's imprisoned, or in this episode, a group of people. It goes down pretty quick. I enjoyed that, though. I like how we're just hitting these plot points quickly rather than extending them out longer than necessary. But that's just my personal preference. And then also the other two part of the Bad Batch crew, Wrecker and Tech, are at the refinery helping Hera and Omega, and they begin firing on the refinery, which causes some damage. And then we flash back to the crew as far as Hunter and Echo breaking the Syndullas out, and Hauser warns them, which leads to a successful mission. So again, it was pretty quick, but I enjoyed the mission. I enjoyed seeing, again, the Bad Batch actually heavily involved in this week's episode. And the 3 shuttles escape. We had Wrecker and Tech on the Bad Batch's shuttle. We had Hera, Omega, and Chopper on the Imperial shuttle that they commandeered. They escape. And Hunter and Echo and the Syndullas are on Senator Taz's ship. So they all escape. The mission is successful. What did you think of the mission? Did you like the action that transpired? I know I did. I liked how fast the mission was able to get completed, because for me, what I'm looking for the most is character development, and we get that. We get these character connections. For me, we legitimize last week what me and Zach talked about as far as being critical of last week's episode, was that, maybe this story doesn't necessarily fit in with the Bad Batch show. But I think this week, this episode legitimized that, so that was great to see. But what did you think? What did you think of that mission? Let me know. Now, the last pair or group of people that we are going to talk about as far as this episode goes, episode 12 of the Bad Batch, is the Syndullas. Now, first of all, before I dive into the Syndullas, I apologize. Recently, for some reason, I completely misremembered Cham's history as far as his next events once the Imperial people, and once the Empire took over Ryloth. For some reason, I completely misremembered his story and what happens next. But thankfully, Discord was there to save me. I got a video sent to me to watch as far as Cham and the Syndulla and Ryloth as a whole once the Empire took over. So that was much appreciated. So again, if you always need help, come join our Discord. We always share some ideas with each other that help us understand this great, great Star Wars galaxy. But anyways, the Syndullas, seeds of Eleni and her eventual fate are planted with her verbal refusal to be on the side of the Empire. Now, I, for one, last week, I think I heavily alluded to it, that I thought we were going to get her eventual fate, which is her death, in this episode, but we did not go there. I was very surprised that we did not go there. Were you surprised? Because that was one thing that I was looking for. Once I saw that the title of this episode was, in fact, Rescue on Ryloth, in my mind, before I clicked play, I thought, okay, you know what? Obviously, the Bad Batch is going to show up. They're going to save Hera. They're going to get Cham. They're going to get as many Syndullas and Twi'leks and citizens of Ryloth as possible. But we know that Eleni is going to pass. We know that she's going to be executed. And I thought that even Crosshair might be the one to do that. But that did not, in fact, occur. So I'm going to come back to that here in a second. So the next thing as far as the Syndullas go is Cham and Eleni plan to reorganize and return to Ryloth. So let me go back to that big takeaway of mine of Eleni not being executed in this episode. With Eleni's fate and Ryloth's plot not fully flushed out, this for me leads me to heavily believe that we are not done with the location. Now, as well, further evidence of that is Hera and Omega's goodbye heavily hints at them working together again. So those are my thoughts with the Syndulla family. I really don't think we're done with them until we see the fate of Eleni played out. Now, that is a very sad storyline, and it's not something, again, necessarily that I have to see, but I think it's still wide open because I think we're gonna see it. Now, again, I am A-okay with these next, what we got 4 episodes left, correct? 4 episodes. I think that 4 episode number, for me, I would love for them to just focus heavily on Crosshair and his character facing against Clone Force 99 and maybe his eventual redemption arc, whether that be him actually, living out and going back to the crew or him sacrificing himself for the Bad Batch. That's what I would rather focus on personally. But it's interesting. It's interesting that they left those things open for them to come back to. Now, if I had to put money on it, if I was betting here, I would say that this Ryloth story would be tabled, set to the side for a season 2. I personally hope and think that we're going to be done with Ryloth for this season, but I do think we're going to come back to it, just maybe not in this season. What do you think, though? Do you want to continue to see Ryloth? Do you want to continue to see the Syndulla family? Do you want to continue to see Hera and Chopper show up in these next 4 episodes? You let me know. Jump down in the comments or tell me in Discord if you are listening on our podcast platform. So those are all of my big takeaways. Those are all of my thoughts regarding this week's episode of The Bad Batch. Admiral Rampart really stood out to me. His Imperial character, everything that he's doing is really starting to hit home with me, and I'm really enjoying the evilness of that character. Captain Hauser, he's a good-looking clone, and he's also standing out, and I think that he presents a potential plot line if they wanted to pursue it, with maybe the inhibitor chips are going bad, maybe they are not working to their best function at this point as time continues to pass. The next thing that stood out to me was Crosshair. He continues to display his hatred for Clone Force 99, and that is purely his motivation. He just wants to go after Clone Force 99, and that's exactly what we're going to see, hopefully, in these next 4 episodes, because Rampart greenlights him actually going after them. So I think we're going to get some pretty cool moments and some pretty special moments with that. And then for me, the reason why this episode was top tier was because Hera and Chopper, we further got them, but we got them incorporated with the show's title, The Bad Batch. And I loved seeing The Bad Batch actually connected to this Ryloth story. You know what, Filoni, we should have trusted you. Last week, me and Zach voiced some concern regarding maybe this episode going too far to the side, but it was played out perfectly. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And then again, one of my final big takeaways is, in fact, the Syndullas. Are we done with them? Are we actually going to see the execution of Hera's mother and so forth? Who knows? We'll see. You let me know what you think of all of those major takeaways from The Bad Batch episode 12. Now, we do have one final thing to do this week on our episode of Mando Talk, and that is to share our Discord thoughts on the episode of The Bad Batch. So let me get those pulled up for those of you on YouTube to be able to read along with me. And our first Discord submission is from none other than Rebel Scum Texan, and you're going to get to hear from him again on Thursday on our live stream. So again, if you didn't do it after the top of this episode, subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can check out our live streams where we talk about Star Wars news. So, Rebel Scum Texan, here's his first Discord submission. He says, the Disney Plus header moved Bad Batch closer to the beginning instead of having at the tail end. I know that's been one of Zach's big concerns, and rightfully so. You know, for me, I personally actually didn't notice that whenever I was watching The Bad Batch this week, only because usually for me I go to continue watching, and sometimes it happens to be there. If it's not there, then I go to new to Disney Plus, because usually it's very accessible as far as that tab goes because it just got released on the day. So yeah, that's interesting though. For me, honestly, I never pay attention to the header, if I'm completely honest, unless it's just a visual that gets my attention. But that's a great point as far as it being closer to the beginning. I think that's extremely important, and I think we'll probably see it more toward the beginning now that Loki has wrapped, and now that some of these shows and movies that they've been pushing out on Disney Plus have been there for a while, especially now that we're getting to our last 4 weeks. We got one more month of The Bad Batch. I think they're going to crank it a little bit more, put some more focus on it, because we are gearing up for the finale. Our next Discord submission again was from Rebel Scum Texan. Rebel Scum Texan again says, there was one moment where Hera says to Omega, "You're lucky," and I laughed because that's the name Boba went by when he tried to kill Windu, and I did not even catch that. That is a great catch by you, Rebel Scum Texan. Yeah, I'm going to have to go back and watch the episode again in order to catch that, and maybe there's a connection there. Maybe they're doing those little things to plant Boba Fett in the back of our minds continually, because there's a lot of fans out there that think we're still getting Boba Fett in this season. I mean, it would make sense. Obviously, Disney Plus used it as a tool to self-promote your future projects. Book of Boba Fett's coming out in December. Why not throw Boba Fett in the Bad Batch? You don't really need to remind us, but to remind other people out there that, hey, Boba Fett is still out there. We're bringing you a new show in December. Don't forget about this character. Again, we're never going to forget about Boba Fett, those of us here at Mando Talk, and I'm sure Rebel Scum Texan and all of the diehard Star Wars fans never going to forget about Boba Fett. But hey, marketing, I'm sure marketing people out there understand the need to maybe throw Boba Fett in the Bad Batch, maybe in the last 4 episodes. Who knows? Next up, we also got another submission from Rebel Scum Texan. Also, the clone trumpet theme played a lot in this episode, and you know what? I am so glad that you brought that up, because that is something that I did not hit when I was running through the episode. Kevin Kiner, he continues to crush it. Again, I'm in the camp of give this man some live action. I would love to see it personally. But yeah, that's a great call. That clone trumpet theme was executed to perfection this week, and I really, really, really enjoyed to see it. And then our last submission here is from The High Ground. The High Ground, that is a beautiful Discord username. And The High Ground says, Hauser is becoming one of my fave clones. You know what? I 1000% agree with you. Obviously, he's one of the better looking clones. I've already talked about that heavily. Probably I've talked about that too much in this week's episode. But hey, it's true. It's fair. He's a good looking clone. But yes, he is becoming one of my favorites as well. I'm going to piggyback right off of you there, High Ground. I think Hauser, if they come out with a fig of Hauser, I'm definitely going to want to get it. If they any product they want to push out with Hauser, I'm probably going to try and get it. But you know what? It's impossible to get toys, collectibles, figures these days as far as it goes for me. You know, and obviously you could probably say, you know what, just order it off of Amazon or order it off of Hasbro. But, you know, I guess I'm just old school. I like going out there and trying to find them because it makes it really special, because here locally, at least in all of the stores that I'm around, it's impossible. It's impossible to find good figures. But anyway, yes, I agree with you, High Ground. Hauser is definitely becoming one of my favorite clones as well. Maybe even top 3. You know, we got Rex, we got Cody. Maybe Hauser is climbing up that ladder. Who knows? Who knows? Well, listen, that is our episode reviewing The Bad Batch this week. We had The Bad Batch episode 12, Rescue on Ryloth. Let us know what you thought of this episode. Jump down in the comments or tell us on Discord. We would love to hear it. But that's all of my thoughts. You know what? I hope you enjoyed flying solo with me this week. Again, reach out to, or you don't have to reach out to him, but tell him in the comments section, congrats to Zach as far as welcoming the baby, and we'll continue to hear his thoughts with The Bad Batch through him hitting me up. I'll continue to read his thoughts on it, and I love talking with Zach. I hope you have enjoyed having Zach on the show, and he'll be back as soon as he can, but, you know, we both came to an agreement that he needed to take as much time as possible off, because you know what? If anything that we've discovered on Mando Talk is that Star Wars is family, and family is by far the most important thing, or one of the most important things in this life. So hopefully, Zach, I know you're listening because you're awesome like that. Hopefully things are going well for you, but we do have Rebel Scum Texans stepping in for Zach on Thursday nights with our live streams, and that starts this week on Thursday, the 22nd of July. On July 22nd, we're going to have our next live stream on YouTube. Rebel Scum Texan's going to be there to talk about Star Wars news with me. But until then, I'm going to get out of here because honestly, you can probably tell I'm kind of losing my voice. I've been doing a bunch of talking because usually I have Zach here to help me or Jacob here to help me. But man, it's been like 30 minutes straight and I just keep going and going and going. And my voice is definitely fading. But hopefully you still enjoyed this week's episode. And until next time, as always, we have spoken.